Carney was just in China, and now he's going to go to India, and all these things like that. It's not a rupture. If you said to me, "Has America become unreliable?" No. It's just you had total reliance, and now it's less reliable.
Jamie Dimon, a man who needs no introduction, the most successful banker of our era. You've built over the last 20 years JP Morgan into a bank that I think, and I'm not just flattering you, stands out. As big as what the next 3 US banks combined. In that 20 years, geopolitics has changed dramatically, economic policy has changed dramatically, technology has changed dramatically, and I want to get to all of those. But let's first start with, what was the secret and very briefly, what's the single most important thing that you did to be so successful at JP Morgan?
First of all, welcome everybody, thrilled to be here. Look, I made a lot of mistakes. I don't want to act like the secret sauce. Relentless, grit, all attention to all details, admit your flaws quick. Problems don't age well. Reverse course when you're wrong. Get great people, let them do their jobs.
It's pretty easy, very easy to do. What do you wish you'd done differently?
What I've done differently? If I look back at mistakes I made, it was, and you've heard this from other CEOs all the time, it was too late. You waited too long, you put up with too much bureaucracy or something like that. And then the other thing is people mistakes. That you just took it too long to recognize, and that takes a long time to fix or something like that. Other decisions that we lost money or something like that, I don't worry that much about that. But those are the two main flaws, I guess.
So it's interesting. You waited too long. Let's talk about that in the context of the huge technological revolution we're in the midst of, and the AI revolution, because you are spending very big on technology, and you've been very aggressive. Can you talk me through how you're thinking about AI and how you're thinking about positioning JP Morgan, and what are you actually doing?
And so we don't look at AI that different than technology. Technology has always been the thing that changes everything we all do. That's been true my whole life, my whole career. So we've always had the head of technology at the management table, and we do any kind of business review. What are you doing in tech? And it could be for finance or HR. It says, what are you doing in tech? How are you going to improve your ops? What are you doing what's better, what other people do? AI, we took it out of tech. They worked close with tech, now has a seat at the table. And so whenever we meet, there's a list of AI. What are you doing in AI? So any one of you, if you worked at JP Morgan, you have your list of what are you doing in AI, what are you implementing? It could be coding, it could be open AI, it could be limited systems. We have 500 use cases, and you got to get better at it. It's very fast, it's changing rapidly. We have an LLM where 150,000 people use it internal data every week. And you just got to make it more to your psyche. And I still think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think this one is faster, is massive. It is like the internet, or electricity. It's not going to roll out over 20 years. It's more parabolic for now.
But when you think about the impact of AI, do you think of it as being an efficiency improver? Are you looking at it, we can improve things across all of these business units, or are you thinking that this is going to reinvent what JP Morgan is at a much more fundamental level?
I think it could be both, so doing things better, faster, quicker, more. So we have use cases in risk, fraud, marketing, errors, customer service, idea generation, hedging. It's used extensively, credit, everywhere. But I do think if you take it to the next step, agents, that could change your business. The speed at which things happen, how people access our systems. And that is true for technology. Remember, in the old days, 40 years ago, you called up to do a stock trade. Now you do it on your iPad, and you enter it, and it goes through algorithms, and it gets automatically executed. So it will change the way customers face us. We have to be very adept at saying, what do you want? You're the customer. How do you want to access it? I think it'll change a bunch.
And
it may lead to us winning and losing in big areas. So,
do you think it poses a threat to incumbents more? Are you more worried about new fintechs coming much more adept at this than you were before?
Well, this is very important. So if you go back 20 years ago, our competitors were Goldman and Morgan and Wells and Bank of America. As you see, they're all doing well now, all of them. But now we have Stripe and PayPal and fintechs and Chime and Dave and Sophie and Revolut and these are great companies, and they're coming at you, some to pick a sliver of the business, some to take your whole business. So I think you have to look at all of that, and if you put your head in the sand, you will lose. I think that was true 30 years ago, but I think it's probably more true today. And the brain power and money that's going to this thing is extraordinary. And so, if we don't do our job faster, quicker, we'll lose too.
And when you take the experience you've had at JP Morgan, what does it make you think about the impact across the economy? Are you in the camp that, say, someone like Dario Amodei is, half of all entry-level white-collar jobs will be gone in 1 to 5 years? Do you think it is going to be a kind of cataclysmic impact on the labor market?
Yeah, I don't know about that. So here, as a business person, my view is don't put your head in the sand. It is what it is. We're going to deploy it. Will it eliminate jobs? Yes. Will it change jobs? Yes. Will it add some jobs? Probably. It is what it is, and you can hope for the world you want, but you're going to get the world you got, and your competitors are going to use it, countries are going to use it. However, I do think it may go too fast for society. And if it goes too fast for society, that's where government and business in a collaborative ways to step in together and come up with a way to retrain and people or move it over time. So you go back, trade adjustment assistance was supposed to do that. If a town loses a factory and they lose jobs, you have income assistance, relocation, early retirement, retraining. We may have to do that, and I think we're doing it already ourselves.
That wasn't exactly a great success.
No,
in the US case, it was incredibly poorly done.
It did not work. We need to be prepared to have something that works this time.
But given the speed at which this is happening, and this is, I'm not so much talking about JP Morgan, I'm talking in public policy terms, given the speed at which this technology is coming, what do governments, what does the US government, what do other governments need to be doing right now to prepare societies for that?
I have a plan to retrain people, relocate people, income assist people. I'll give you a thought exercise, okay? 2 million commercial truckers in the United States. It may get to the point where you can push a button, you're going to save lives, it's going to be faster, you're going to save CO2, it obviously makes sense. And should you do it all at once if 2 million people go from driving a truck, making $150,000 a year, to a next job might be $25,000? No, you'll have civil unrest. So therefore, phase it in, retrain.
How can you phase in AI?
Just tell them you can't lay off 2 million truckers tomorrow. You can phase it in over.
So you want the government to tell you can't lay off a whole bunch of people at JP Morgan?
And we would agree. If we have to do that to save society, remember, it'll be more productive society. So society will have more production. We're going to cure a lot of cancers. You're not going to slow it down. How do you have plans in place to make it work better if, in fact, it does something terrible? And that's the only way to do it.
And that should be done at the level of the government telling companies they cannot lay off?
No, I think it should be done at more of a local level where someone says to a JP Morgan, we give you incentives to put in place to retrain these people. Can you slow this down and give people income assistance? Yeah, we could do stuff like that. We're not going to kill all of our employees tomorrow because of AI. We're just not like that.
Absent that, will in 5 years' time, will JP Morgan have fewer employees than it has now?
Well, if we're good, we'll have, we're growing still around the world, but my guess is it'll be fewer employees, yeah.
In 5 years.
Yeah.
So AI, the technological revolution, is one of the huge changes we're living through. We're also living through a very dramatic geopolitical shift. The word Greenland keeps coming up here. Before we get to Greenland itself, more broadly, you've written in shareholder letters over the years about the importance of geopolitics. You've worried about geopolitics in previous years. How dangerous is this particular geopolitical moment? Is it the most dangerous you've seen?
Right. Look, I think it's cumulative. I mean, I think the world, after the invasion of Ukraine, by 300,000 Russian troops, we eyes wake up. We thought the world was safe. It's simply not safe. And so, my view is what I want. And I think you should always talk about what is you actually want. You're a king for a queen for a day. I want a stronger NATO.
Years.
I think we need a stronger NATO. I think it's right for us to complain that NATO didn't do enough. Fine, got it. Crying over spilled milk. How do you make it stronger? And I think we need a stronger Europe. I think that's good for America. It's good for Europe. They know what they need to do. The Draghi report and all these common markets and savings and investment policies, and they don't have that common market yet. They have too much bureaucracy. They have too much things that get in the way. But that would be good for Europe and very good for America. And trade and tariffs are part of that, but not the only part of that. So I still think that's the best thing, to keep the Western world together. That would be my goal: make the world safer and stronger for democracy, so that we don't read that book 40 years from now, how the West lost.
Do you think the Trump administration is making the world safer and stronger and making NATO stronger?
Yeah, I don't think it's a binary thing. I think that to isolate what NATO weaknesses are, I think that's fine. They do it in their own way. I wouldn't say things like that on TV. I might say it publicly, privately. So I think that's all right. I think it's okay to point out. I would be more polite about it, about the weaknesses of Europe, what they need to do. But if the goal is to make them stronger as opposed to fragment Europe, then I think that's okay.
But do you think that is the goal?
I don't know. I have not heard them say what they want the ultimate goal to be.
So, but you're not the only one.
But remember, we did not leave NATO. And so, to me, it's important to understand that, originally during Trump 1, people thought, oh, we're going to leave. No, we didn't. He's out there and in the world, and you may not agree with it all, but it's not a treaty in America of some sort. And so, and I think the economic side is more complicated because it entails really detailed policy that needs to get done. And I would if I was there, I would kind of be using our moral persuasion, our economics persuasion, our intelligence and military to kind of push Europe to do the things that's right for Europe. And the leadership of Europe has to do it. It really can't be done by America, but we can be a partner maybe furthering that.
We'll come to the economics in a second, but just one more on the geopolitics, because you're right that it's hard to characterize what the Trump doctrine is, if you will. It's not America first, it's not America alone, it might be America unconstrained, but it has elements that we can now tell. It is a transactional foreign policy. It is a foreign policy that places much less weight actually on alliances. It's a bullying foreign policy. Overall, is that a foreign policy that is good for America?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on all that because when you deal with the press, you guys always want binary answers to everything.
I honestly think that's a reasonable question. Is it a good thing for America to have this kind of policy?
Let me correct you a little bit, okay? When I talk to the press, they never asked me to comment on everything Biden did. And I think he did some terrible things both domestically and in foreign policy. Do I agree with everything the Trump administration? Of course not.
No, but in aggregate, is this a good foreign policy?
I don't know yet. If they were here, if I were talking to the president, I'd be saying exactly what I'm saying. This should be the goal. Here are the ways to get it. These things may be counter to that.
So there's an argument that China is actually the big winner from this approach because China has stood up to the United States on tariffs and faced down the United States. China is now projecting itself as a stable supporter of multilateralism. Do you think China is the winner from this?
I think that's a real stretch. China has a $15,000 per person GDP. Ours is 85. We're the most dynamic economy and prosperous the world's ever seen. We have 40 military alliances, 140 economic alliances. They have one. They've done a great job in so many things, but they still import 10 million of barrel oil a day. Yeah, this has created some openings for them. Are they going to be the best economic or military alliance for a lot of the people out there who are mad at America? Probably not. So, so I take a deep breath in that one, and it's easy to say. I think they've done things right. They have serious problems. In their economy, they've got, kind of two economies, the consumer, real estate, misallocation of capital, huge investment in technology. I applaud them. Let them, cars and batteries and stuff like that. But whether that works over a long period of time, I do not know. They, on their own, without us, okay, and you guys always forget to mention this, Korea, Japan, Australia, Philippines, they're all rearming on their own. That's China's actions caused that, not America's, actions. We're part of that. I remember between Rahm Emanuel and his ambassador, how they're working with, they've got Korea and Japan working together. They're going to rearm, which I think they have to at this point. And so, yeah, this is a lot of things taking place here, not just one.
Yeah.
And so I try to keep open-minded about all those things and give as best advice as I can to my country or other people when asked.
There are a lot of things happening at the same time. But I'm just trying to get a sense from you about the scale of the moment. Do you think this is, Prime Minister Carney has called it a rupture. Do you think this is we are shifting, is this post-war order that we all talked about, including you, I think, in previous shareholder letters, is that over? Are we in a new world now?
Again, you're making it binary. I don't know. I saw part of Carney's speech. I have a lot of respect for Carney. He did, we're causing some things that may not be good in the long run for America, like, Carney was just in China, and now he's going to go to India and all these things like that. It's not a rupture. If you said to me, has America become unreliable? No. It's just you had total reliance, and now it's less reliable. It's probably more which is now...
Now we're talking semantics. This is my profession, not yours. I mean, less reliable... At some point, you become unreliable.
Well, we're still a military ally to all 40 countries. When I talk to our military, they're geared up to defend their allies around the world. Trump hasn't stopped all that. So I think it's time for people to take a little bit of a deep breath. That does not mean I like it all. And of course, all my Democratic friends send me notes. You got to say this. You got to say that. You got to say this. And my point is, well, no, they never go through any detail whatsoever. They just huff and puff and get angry, and that doesn't work. So. I know what I believe in. I'm going to write some more about it in my chairman's letter about policy I think that work or don't work, and that's what I'm going to do.
So let's talk about economic policy, where there's also been a pretty big change. Two big areas. We've gone from a U.S. that underwrote multilateral trade rules to a U.S. that believes in tariffs. Now, the tariffs that have ended up being imposed are 10% probably on average, not quite as high as we feared on Liberation Day. Is that a good idea?
Again, it's not binary. There are three. But you guys, you got to get your heads out of your own echo chamber. There are three parts to trade, okay, and some require tariffs, okay. One part is national security. We should do what we have to do to create national security around rare earths, around advanced active pharmaceutical ingredients, and some that may require policy that is not typical, like tariffs or pay long-term dated contracts, so you can build the stuff here you need, and some advanced manufacturing category. These companies cannot succeed if there aren't barriers, quotas, tariffs, or pay for play. Absolutely a sine qua non. I would do what I had to do to protect American national security. The second one is unfair trade. And I'd say unfair important trade. I just don't think furniture or T-shirts are important trade, but there is unfair trade. It's in some places blown out of proportion, but if you are subsidizing China in this case, or anyone, subsidizing their cars, their batteries, this, that, so anyone who tries to compete is going to get sunk because of subsidies, and the subsidies can come in various forms, then you should counter that. You can counter that with quotas. A lot of countries have quotas. You can counter that with tariffs, perfectly fine, as long as there's a reason for it. But I'm not a tariff guy in general. I don't think in general it's a great idea, but it is what it is, and so. But
the president is a tariff guy in general.
He is.
He loves tariffs.
He is.
So this is an area where you would disagree.
I would.
Okay, good. Finally, immigration. Another big change in immigration policy. We've essentially gone from a huge amount of unconstrained immigration, which clearly the president ran on countering and has done, but to a United States that is, much, much more skeptical of immigration, both, legal and illegal.
Yeah.
Is that good?
So I'm still angry at the Biden administration for what they allowed to happen, okay? And I think it's severely damaged our country. And they say, there's nothing you can do about it. No, Trump comes in, boom, it's closed. God bless them. If countries have to control their borders, or they will cause huge problems. And you have that all over Europe. And it's even worse there because in America, most people coming to America want to be American. They come to work. They can't wait to become a citizen of the United States of America. That's not true for most of the European immigration. I was with President Trump when Trump won, and I said to him, when you get the borders controlled, fix the rest of it. DACA stay, he said, yeah. More merit-based, he said, absolutely. A path to citizenship for hardworking people, absolutely. Proper asylum. I would urge him to do that. I think he can because he controlled the borders and stuff like that. Do you
see much evidence of that?
Not yet. A little bit in the merit side. You see them talking about it in the merit side and places. And, of course, I don't like what I'm seeing, with, 5 grown men beating up little women. Okay, so I think we should calm down a little bit on the internal anger about immigration. And, for those people, I've heard Trump say, even this term, hey, we need these people. They work in our hospitals and our hotels and restaurants and agriculture, and they're good people because we all know them. They are good people. They should be treated that way.
That's not what you're seeing on the streets of.
You know what? When I don't. Yes, it's not always what you see, and I think rounding up criminals is one thing. I don't have a chart that shows. And this is why I'm a fanatic about detail. Show me who's been rounded up. Are they here legally? Are they criminals? Did they do some law? Did they break American law? But I don't like what I'm seeing. But it's hard for me to tell whether that's just, what the liberal press plays or whether there's more truth to that.
You're beginning to sound quite Trumpy in this. The liberal press plays.
I'm not Trumpy. I'm a realist, and I like facts and detail and not binary shit that goes on all the time with.
We can agree. We can agree on.
I think The Economist is the absolute best, most analytical thing in the world, and you should continue that. So.
Absolutely. Well, if we do. We are and we do. Let's talk about one other area, institutions. Attacks on institutions and undermining of independent institutions, the Fed being the obvious one. There has been, and I don't think I'm, being, as you would say, too binary on this, there have very clearly been pressure on the Fed. Notably, 10 days ago, the announcement by Chair Powell that he had received a subpoena for a criminal investigation. Yeah. Is that a good idea?
Everyone I know, including President Trump, says we should have an independent Fed is critical. I've never seen anyone actually that's not. Now, they're not completely independent, just so you know. There's two parts to the Fed. One is monetary. That needs to be independent. The other is regulatory. Huge overreach. That's not independent. That's law. And let me finish. I don't like, I think the things that undercut independence are not good. So I think some of those words, I don't like lawfare. I've had to deal with lawfare my whole life. I mean, going way back, we're constantly being, unfairly sometimes, fairly sometimes, but blown out of proportion. I think that undercuts it. So I think, Powell will be gone in 5 months. I think, constant statements is a mistake. And just so you know, the Fed doesn't really set interest rates. Okay, just listen closely to me. What happens if inflation goes up? They raise interest rates. What happens if inflation goes down? They reduce interest rates. They are a fast follower. And if you look at all Fed history, it isn't like they're completely independent. And the last time, and by every American president wants lower rates, but the last time a president jawboned lower rates was Arthur Burns, President Nixon, who had a 60% approval rating when he got elected. Inflation was only 3.5%. It kept on going up. Of course, there was Watergate and the oil crisis, but markets were down 40%. He resigns in disgrace. Inflation and with deficits and deficits are inflationary. With deficits half what they are today, it went for 4%, 5%, 6%, 7%, and you can come up with all the reasons: stronger unions, the oil issues, and all that. But inflation is a bugaboo, and the Fed has to deal with inflation, and that's a judgment of a lot of people what that means. So,
but just to be very clear, what we're seeing now is lawfare, and you're against it.
I don't like the courts doing stuff like that. I think they should be very thoughtful about when they pick something up like that.
One of the other policies that the president announced recently.
And by this has been going on my whole life too. So this isn't just President Trump.
I get that.
Okay, so let's be clear about DOJ overreach. It's been consistent now for 20 years. And in the old days, the DOJ would step into something when it was referred to them by either civil or criminal. Now they just read the paper and step in, and that's a mistake because to them they're a hammer. To them everything's a nail. And
one of President Trump's recent proposals that would directly affect you, he's doing it to improve affordability, is to impose a 10% cap on credit card rates. Is that a bad idea?
It would be an economic disaster. And I'm not making it up because our business, we would survive it, by the way. You would, if you, in the worst case, you'd have to have a drastic reduction of the credit card business. I mean drastic. I mean like 10%. I mean like 80%. It would remove credit from 80% of Americans, and that is their backup credit. But I have a great idea. Since there's a huge disagreement on this one, between Republicans and Democrats, I think we should test it. And in my view, and I can't do this, because it'd be antitrust. But the government can do it. They should force all the banks to do it in 2 states, Vermont and Massachusetts, and see what happens. and then I think the left will learn everyone who thinks manipulating price will learn a real lesson. And the people crying the most won't be the credit card companies. It'll be the restaurants, the retailers, the travel companies, the schools, the municipalities, because people will miss their water payments, their this payment and that payment. It would be something else to watch. I think they should test it.
Well, President Trump may be determined to test it more broadly.
Well, then, okay, whatever it is, we'll deal with it. I think it's wrong for the government to get involved extensively in pricing of stuff, but I got to deal with the world I got.
It's kind of interesting.
We're going to give them, at one point, real analysis on the effects of this. We've given some, but not a lot.
It's kind of interesting. When I ask you something that directly affects JP Morgan, you say it will be a complete economic disaster. Yeah. When I speak more broadly about geopolitics, you're very reluctant to criticize the president.
First of all, one I know exactly. The other one is more qualitative, how it's going to work, what are the pieces, what's their intent, how are people going to respond. They're not the same thing. But the economic, when you believe something to be true, you should say that. And so the economic of the card thing, we'll see.
Do you think CEOs...
But the other thing, I've not seen anyone, really, Republicans, senators, businesses, banks, credit unions, community banks, anyone think it's a good idea.
Do you think it is?
But it goes back to this thing about, this word affordability. Of course we want affordability. The Democrats don't want affordability. What we've screwed up as a nation is bad policy around housing, mortgages, affordability, health, immigration. We've messed up so many policies, which I write about. It's time to fix them, and I think the economists can help do that because you guys are really smart people. And so, and we constantly have this economic policy that we don't think it through. We've driven half the companies out of the public markets. What are we doing? Why did that happen? And then we just can't deal with reality anymore as a people because we want a simple answer to everything. And so,
when you tot up all the things we've been talking about, the president's policies, both geopolitically and economically, and the tech change that we're living through, do you think the U.S. economy is, on balance, in better shape or worse shape?
It's been hugely resilient. It's in pretty good shape. You're going to have a lot of stimulus early in this year, so you're going to, and multiple forms of it, from the one big beautiful bill to what they're doing with student lending to, some of the mortgage purchasing they're doing, deregulation of banks, which is real, deregulation, which feeds animal spirits. Our economy is so large and so integrated and so complex, and it's hard to always tell, but the innovation is unbelievable. You take a trip to Silicon Valley and look at these companies, it blows you away. The brain power going to fixing things and curing cancer and fixing machines. And so I think it's great. So you talk about economic policy, I think what government should be focused more on is policy conducive to growth. And then, of course, you have policies that help the old, the sick, the aged, et cetera. And we don't even do good in that in a lot of cases. So I think we could do a better job making the economy work for everybody. And it is a little bit of this K economy now. We do see that where, the upper income are doing far better. They got houses and stocks, and the lower side, they're back to normal, which is they don't have enough of a rainy day fund. Jobs are getting a little harder to get. Incomes have stopped growing a little bit. And we're quite conscious of that. And I think there are things we can do. Like, for example, and we've done analysis, I would double the earned income tax credit. I would give people working more money as a negative tax. So you're making $14,000, you get a check from the government of $12,000. I get rid of the child requirement. Then you're giving it to the people who actually use it to further their lives, spend in their communities, take care of their kids, as opposed to government dictating, how you spend money on every little thing you do. And so I think there are real fixes that make society work better for everybody. And
would you raise taxes to pay for that?
I don't think you'd have to. I think it would drive a lot of growth. I think I did the numbers at one point. It'd be $60 billion of spending. I think it would probably create more than that of growth and taxes. And if you have to raise taxes a little bit, that's fine. But again, I don't want to have the binary argument. I don't know anyone, okay, and you guys in the room, might be Democrats, Republicans, who thinks the spending that sending another $1 trillion to Washington, D.C. will actually improve anything. So when you say raise taxes, if you said raise taxes and directly give it to the people who need it, I'd do it.
So
but that's not what happens.
We are running out of time.
It goes to all these interest groups, and they give it to their friends and all that, and which is why the people are considered a swamp. It's kind of a swamp. There's 17,000 lobbying groups, but bank companies are guilty too. They're just fighting for their one self-interest as opposed to what's good for my country. But that's what happens in Congress. And you see how these bills get spent. Like the CHIPS Act was a good idea until. It had to be unions, place-based, child care, diapers. What the hell are we doing? And we do it over and over, and then it fails, and then we spend more money because the problem is we didn't spend enough money.
So you're a man with many strong opinions. We've heard that in the last few minutes. Man, not afraid to tell us about those opinions. But I was struck when we were talking about President Trump. You were very, very careful. And you are one of the more outspoken. Just let me finish. Well, you are one of the more outspoken business leaders. I'm genuinely struck by the unwillingness of CEOs in America to say anything critical. There is a climate of fear in your country. Would you agree with that? And what should be done about it?
This is the Davos intellectual elite. I've been coming to Davos all these years and listening to chatter and stuff like that. He didn't do a particularly good job making the world a better place. I think it's great we get together and talk. But what you want me to do, this is.
I wanted to answer my question. It's not hard.
One headline that gets raised up.
No, I don't. A million different Jamie, that's not true. I'm genuine. I've asked you this question off camera.
I've made it clear. I want a stronger NATO, a stronger Europe. Some of the things Trump has done are causing that. Some are not. I'm not a tariff guy, though I'd use it in the 8 cases I had. I think they should change their approach to immigration. I've said it. What the hell else do you want me to say?
Is there a climate of fear?
I think that is completely clear. You know, hey, ready? Here's your headline. I'm a globalist.
I'm not looking for a headline. I'm trying to have a conversation. I'm not looking for a headline.
I know, yeah.
But I enjoyed that. We're running out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.